Yes, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Rugby Muscle podcast. I'm your host, as always, TJ, and today we are going to talk about something that is incredibly powerful, not necessarily specific to the details of what you should be doing with your strength and conditioning, but something that is incredibly powerful and can make a huge difference with your progress in the long term and a little bit in the short term too, but also with your overall sort of, I guess, happiness and fulfillment in your life as a person. But in this situation, of course, we're talking about rugby strength and conditioning, and as it pertains to this, absolutely this does apply. So let's get into the goal setting podcast. So we've done goal setting before. It's something that I've always been very bullish on, and I think it's something that is going to be incredibly valuable to you. Of course, this is a perfect time to discuss this, as the podcast will be released between Christmas and New Year's. So maybe you're listening to this and you've got a few minutes where you've been able to get away from the hecticness of all of the family obligations or something, and you want to be able to figure out what it is that you want to achieve in the new year, or you're just deciding on what it is exactly that you can do. And this podcast is designed to help you if that's the case, or if you're someone that just wants to play your best rugby and wants to make sure that you do everything in your power to do that. And I say everything within your power, so we're not talking unrealistic expectations, we're talking about what you can actually achieve, maximizing that. Again, this episode is for you. And I've always been really bullish on goal setting, so much so, obviously, here that it's the second episode in this sort of sequential rugby strength and conditioning breakdown that I'm doing with this podcast, with regards to it being just after the ground zero, building your program from nothing. I did that first so that you can understand exactly what the scope of rugby strength and conditioning looks like, and now we want to figure out what that scope looks like for you and which direction you want to take it. So we'll get into how I've changed my mind with it in a second. But first, I have to recommend or ask you guys to please hit the 3 dots, give us a 5-star review on Spotify, give it a thumbs up on the YouTube, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I don't think you can do anything on Google Podcasts. And if you have any questions for the Q&A pods, or if you wish to leave just a comment for the algorithm, or even potentially leave your goals in the comments in the YouTube section or in the 3 dots, and if you click Q&A on the Spotify feed, you can leave a comment there as well. As you will have listened to last week, those questions got answered straight away, so that's a really good way to get some good questions asked and then answered from me, is by leaving a comment in the Q&A on Spotify. And of course, I haven't asked you guys to do this for a while, but share it with a teammate. I get to grow the show, or that gets to grow the show. You get a teammate that is going to be a better player. You get to help them out. Then you can also discuss them and have ideas bouncing back and forth. It's win, 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 win. Everyone's a winner if you just recommend the show to a teammate. Or what would be even more amazing, the best way really you can help, the most way I can really easily see it as well, is just take a screenshot and tag me at Rugby Muscle on Instagram, post it to your story. Show everyone that you're already, before the New Year's even started, put in the intention to take action for 2024. And so, yeah, setting goals is really going to be something that I think people either do subconsciously, or they do, they make a big thing of it. I was definitely someone that made a big thing of it, and I still do it in that way, but I don't set it. I've definitely changed the way I do it. So previously, I would really try to make my goals as tangible as possible, time bound, so we could really reach the end of the goal, or reach the end of the time frame for that goal, and be able to just whether I achieved it or not. I'm not so much of that ilk at the minute, and I guess I'll get into why, because we can't really know where that goal is going to take us. So, for example, to highlight the power of goals, what was it, 4 years ago now in 2019? Is that 4 or 5 years ago? On this very podcast, back in the early days, I set myself the goal of being able to have a more environmentally friendly way of eating. And then I made that, like, that was my tangible goal. And I had no idea where that was going to take me. And right now I am a vegan, quote unquote, athlete. I am as plant-based as there is. I haven't eaten meat since January or February of that year, because my original short-term goal from that was to say, okay, now I'm gonna only buy organic meat and eat organic meat, and then maybe if I'm out at a friend's house, I won't worry. I was like sort of a flexitarian to start with. Actually, I wasn't even a flexitarian, because I would still eat my own organic meat. If I was out, I'd still buy meat, whatever. And then that just snowballed, and that's the power of goals. Same thing with jiu-jitsu. I just said I'm gonna go twice a week, and that's it. And at the end of the year, I was a blue belt, and now I am a grappler with 4.5 years plus or so of experience. British title under my belt, South American title under my belt, and just it's something I do everywhere I go, and it's an important part of my life. And so, I think the power is still underrated as to how powerful goals can be, but I think we restrict ourselves a little bit too much as to how that needs to be, and that allows us a little bit too cheaply to be able to give up or forget about these goals. So let's discuss how I've changed my mind and how we want to implement these goals. First step you want to do is, and this is going to sound really woo-woo, but you want to establish a long-term vision. And this will be for 1 year's time or even further down the line. Like, there's no time horizon on this. There's no timeline for this, right? It's years to come. It's who you want to be. It's not what you want to achieve, what you want to have achieved, anything overly tangible. It's who you want to be, okay? It's incredibly important to have that long-term vision. I call it a North Star when I'm working with my clients to deal with this. And what we do is we get a clear vision so that they can sort of stay motivated and focused, but also from that. So there's a motivation and focus element as to, okay, this is exactly who I want to be. I'm pumped. You're no longer hashtag sacrificing to win or doing anything as a grind or anything. You're just living the life that you are wanting to live, because this is what you want. Right? And if it wasn't what you want, then this isn't. Then change your goal, change your vision, because that's not what you want. Change your vision to be something that you want to achieve, that you want to be, that you want to play. And when I say what you want to achieve, I don't mean any tangible achievements. I mean achieve being the person that you want to be. All right. So this obviously gives a really good guiding light for your overall training. Right. For example, if you're someone that wants to score a ton of tries and to be a really good sevens player, you're not going to spend 5 or 6 sessions a week doing bodybuilding training, right? Getting as big as possible and doing no speed work. Likewise, if you want to be a really impactful scrummager or something, then same thing. You're not going to spend all of your time doing it. It guides your training as to how you want to play, the athlete you want to be, the person that you want to be, and it guides that as far as your training and performance objectives go. But it also, right, allows you to say, okay, this is the life I want to live. This is the person I want to be, right? Not just right, how you want to perform or whatever, but it's how you want to live, right? It's not just, I want to be someone, I want to perform this way. I want to be someone who performs this way. And how do you be someone who performs this way? You train with those things in mind, right? Those things don't just appear. Those things are worked for, right? If you, this isn't to apply to rugby, it's a really good example. If you want to run a sub 3-hour marathon, right? You can't just run a sub 3-hour marathon. You have to be the person that runs a sub 3-hour marathon. That means X amount of training, right? That means sleep. That means, like, and I say X amount of training, not just X amount of training over a series of months, maybe even years, but also training per week, right? That all is the person that is able to run a 3-hour marathon. It's not just, I want to run a 3-hour marathon. How can I do that with the least amount of work possible? A person that can run a 3-hour marathon isn't going to think that. Unless they've already done it, unless they've already lived that life. You know what I mean? So you have to become that person. And what that then does is, it, in a weird way, it sort of takes the pressure off, right? Because once you're living that life, you don't feel bad for eating a bad meal or skipping a session, because you just go right back to living the life that you're living, right? You can have 2 weeks off, you can have a week off, you can have a month off, right? You know that because you're going to live the life that to achieve the end goal or the person that you want to be, and that's obviously always changing as well, you have to, you will go back to living that way, right? So there's no panic if you gorge on a bag of sweets, or there's no panic if you get a few too many mince pies over the Christmas period. There's no panic if you didn't train between December 20th and January 1st, because you know you're going to go right back to it. And it's just a matter of time till you achieve it, or till you get to the end result or the end person that you want to be, and then you're living that life. And then even when you're living that life, you're going to be focused on the next thing. You're going to continually be moving forward, or you're going to sit back and be content, and then you'll still make another goal, because that's what being a human is all about. And so I think that's the biggest power when it comes to setting goals. There's no timeline for this. This is just figuring out who you want to be, and then just being that person time and time again. And it's not a process that's done overnight. It's not a process that you can just say, this is how I want to live, okay, I'm an expert, or this is how I want to live, fucked up, I guess I can't do that. No, it's a continual work in progress for years. And then even when you do achieve it, then you put in the work to keep it, right? And if you're able to keep it, it's only because you've put in the work. If you go right back to living your old life that wasn't in alignment with your goal, you're going to go back to the old person that wasn't in alignment with that goal. So it's not just making a sacrifice to get to the end goal. It's actually, this is how you want to live. And that reframing is really powerful. And I think that in itself is one of the most powerful parts of goal setting. It's something that I didn't really convey, because I thought it's all about the long-term outputs and how that's going to be, how those are going to be constructed. Okay, but this North Star is basically everything. Okay, because everything gets guided by this North Star, and it, like a North Star, right? You just continually follow it until, I don't know, you meet baby Jesus, or you reach to where you want to be, right? If you're in LA and you want to walk to New York, you know which direction you're going to walk, and you're going to keep walking there. And what you're going to find is there's going to be days where you walk in a complete wrong direction, or there's going to be days where you just don't get up at all. But you only guarantee yourself that you're never going to get to New York if you stop and if you quit, right? As long as you're keeping trying, even if you're going not quite the right way, even if you take 3 days off, or even if you take a week off, you get back on and you start going again. Once you've got that long-term North Star, you're also then much more able, more capable of making good, informed decisions about what you want to achieve with your training, with your nutrition, with your lifestyle. You're not doing ice baths because someone told you that's good, right? You're not doing a special superset with bench press and flies because someone told you that's what you got to do. You're saying, no, actually, my upper body strength's where it needs to be. I need to focus on something else, right? It allows you to say no to a lot of things. It allows you to figure out what you're supposed to say yes to, because you now have your guiding star, your guiding light, where you want to achieve, who you want to be. And so what do you want to train in order to do that? Or how do you need to train? How do you need to perform on the pitch? How do you need to, what do you need to be doing in the gym, in life? And so you can even work this goal setting from the flip side, right? So you could actually look at your schedule and say, what's the most realistic schedule that you can stick to as far as training goes, that lives in alignment with how you want to live, training the amount that you want to train, but also, still giving up your own time for your family, your social, your working life, all of that stuff. You're not sacrificing. Again, so incredibly important to not look at training as a sacrifice. You're looking at your long term outcomes that you can then achieve as a result of that training, right? So if you can only train 2 or 3 times a week, all you can do is either extend out your time horizon, or I don't want to say be more realistic, but look at what the best possible outcome you can achieve as a result of the amount that you're willing to train. The best possible outcome. And that's much like the best possible. You can achieve amazing things training just 2 or 3 times a week over the course of years. Amazing things. Like better than 99, you get better results than 99% of everyone else, because you're doing those 2 to 3 sessions in alignment the whole time. And once you've got that, right, you've got your long term, then we can start to work towards those goals by setting some long and short term performance / implementation goals, not outcome goals, performance / implementation. Right. So what do I mean by performance / implementation? Or actually, what do I mean by outcome? Right. Outcome goals are focused on the end result. There's something that is not entirely in your control. Right. Winning a championship, getting selected on a team, getting X amount of caps, winning a league, whatever it is, scoring X amount of tries. These are things that are easily measurable, but they're not really in your control. So having those things in mind is cool, but I don't think you need to base success or failure off of those metrics. A much better way to look at it is to look at the actions and behaviors that are in your control that would contribute to those outcomes that you want to achieve. So if you have a coach that doesn't like you, what are all the things that are in your control that you can do to get selected in the position that you want to play and play as much rugby as you want to play? Go about doing those. And if that eventually means that, I spoke about this on a previous podcast a while back, if he's never selecting you, maybe it does mean that you change team. But it's whatever it is that is, it's unless you specifically state that you must be playing for this team, then having this alignment just helps you so much. So anyway, focusing on your own factors. So the amount of training that you're getting in, what you're doing with your training, the consistency of your training, like performance or implementation goals. What are you going to do in the next 3 to 6 months on a weekly basis, on a daily basis? What are the actions that you can take that are completely within your control? Measure those, and then you can see how your and you don't even necessarily have to measure them, because if you're living in alignment with that big long-term vision, you're going to know whether you're doing it or not, right? And sometimes the measurement is good because it's just a bit of a reassurance that you are living in alignment with what you want to do. Sometimes we're very easy to beat ourselves up saying that we're not achieving what we're supposed to achieve when we're actually doing everything within our power. And so rather than quit, as we said, you just keep it moving, and eventually, everything's gonna fall into your path and gonna work out for you. I think that's a big one, right? We look too often at things that are out of our control and beat ourselves up that we didn't achieve things that are out of our control, whether we did or did not actually do the things that were in our control that would have led to that, right? So if your team wins the game but you played like shit, yeah, right, the outcome is what you wanted, but you'll still probably feel a little bit something nagging in the back of your head because you didn't quite perform as you wanted to perform. But maybe performing as you wanted to perform isn't quite in your control. So then you look back at your training. Okay, did you do everything with your training you could have? Maybe, or maybe not. And so this is how we kind of attack goal setting from a two-pronged approach, like really two kind of ends of the spectrum, as far as like the vision that is really not measurable at all. You just kind of know it. You never know when you've achieved it. You're never actually going to achieve it. And then something really measurable, such as X amount of sessions a week, or X amount of calories per day, or X amount of meals, X, or whatever the goal is, right? Because then you've got that measurable performance an intentional goal to really back up whether you are living in alignment with your long-term North Star, your long-term vision. Because if you're not, then you'll see that because you're not doing those things that you set out to do. However, those things that you can measure are only an indicator. They're not everything, right? So say if you said, I'm going to do 2 conditioning sessions a week for 6 months in order to achieve my long-term vision of being a relentless flanker that never stops, like in a game, and then you break your leg, you're not living out of alignment because you broke your leg because you're not training your condition. Likewise, maybe you could still get, you can get in the pool. What could you do? You could do an upper body set, like conditioning, or you just these performance implementation goals are going to be anywhere from 3 to 6 months at a time, maybe as short as 6 weeks, but they're a lot more to do with not any real performance outcome, but what you are doing, right? It's a way of measuring if you, and it's not the be all and end all. It's just a great way of measuring whether you are really living in alignment with that long-term vision. And obviously, if you are failing at this implementation goal, it means one of 3 things. It either means, number one, you need to change, you need to get better, you need to improve, you need a bit of a kick up the arse. Could be. Sometimes it means that actually your long-term vision isn't how you want to live your life. Like, you're actually not prepared to make the priorities in that way that you thought you did, and only in trying to do as much as you can, right? Say you said, okay, I'm going to be the person that makes 5 gym sessions a week. Maybe that's just not realistic, right? So you then sort of taper down your long-term vision, and maybe you can either set a longer time horizon and just say, okay, I don't need to be this amazing in 1 year. Maybe I'll give myself 18 months, or maybe it doesn't really matter, right? I just give myself a little bit of slack because maybe I'm not prepared to do that much. Or you completely change what it is you want to achieve, either because you made a conscious decision or because subconsciously you forgot. And subconsciously you forgot, that's when you go back to the kick up the arse. Or if it is what you want to achieve and you've changed your mind about your long-term vision, then you don't need this goal. You need to change what that goal is. And so this works in both the short term and the long term. So I said from anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months, you want to be able to get things as measurable as possible, and you want these things to be as single-minded, single-sighted as possible. All right, the long-term vision, you can try to achieve everything. You can try to be big, strong, fast, ripped, powerful, agile, also really fun and a top lad on the beers. You can try and do everything, right? Long term. Short term, no chance you're going to be able to do all of those things at the same time. You probably need to get really, really fit first, or you need to work on getting as muscular as possible first, or both of those 2 things at the same time. 2 things you can probably do, but to get as fit as possible first, to get as muscular as possible at the same time, and to get really, really fast and also be a top lad on the beers all at the same time, not going to do it. No chance. So instead, you be as single-minded, singly focused as possible. Maybe set 2, maybe 3. The issue I see people run into here is that instead of saying, okay, I want to run, instead of whittling that down, they say, okay, I want to be, my first goal is that I want to be strong, fast, and powerful. And I'm like, no, that's already 3 things, so that's not first, and it goes from there. You have to prioritize. That's the point of prioritization. That's the point of setting these goals in the short term, is to tell everything else to fuck off, because that can't be prioritized. The whole point of prioritizing is 1 to 2 things, right? If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, because that's the whole definition, all right, of setting out these priorities. So yeah, Set yourself 1 to 3 things that you want to consistently hack away at, make it measurable, and consistently check in. And this is where the weekly intentions come in, right? I think weekly intentions are really important because you can review them on a weekly basis and you can see before it's too late whether things are starting to slip out of alignment, or give yourself regular pats on the back because you're doing exactly what is necessary. I've never been impressed by someone that's been able to stick with a program for 2 or 3 weeks. But the ability to stick with a program for 2 to 3 weeks should be fuel to then continue. You shouldn't expect to achieve amazing results in that period of time. But you can look back and see that you're able to stay consistent for that period of time, which then means you can still stay consistent for 2 or 3 more weeks, and then 2 or 3 more weeks. And all of a sudden you've strung together 6 months of living in perfect alignment, and you've changed completely who you are as an athlete. And so you do not just the long and the short term implementation goals, but you do the weekly intentions and you revisit them every week. And sometimes you're going to have failed, but that fail is either a learning experience as far as what you could do better, or it's a learning experience of maybe you set your expectations a little bit more realistic, or it's a learning experience as sometimes weeks just get away from you, and that's okay. It's okay if 1 week gets away from you. It's okay if maybe 2 weeks get away from you. It's okay if you have a week where, like I say, you're someone that wants to lose 100 pounds, 50-ish kilos, right? Having a week where you're going off your diet plan isn't a disaster unless that week then becomes the norm, right? Having 1 week off, I mean, I don't know why you would, right? Why would you want, like, unless it's just impossible as far as like implementation goes. But if you really want to be that person long term, and this is where that long term vision comes back and is incredibly powerful. If you really want to be that person long term, then you're going to be that person. You don't need to take a week off, because why would you take a week off from who you are, right? Who you want to be. And if you do, and if you make that decision, that's fine. You then go back to whatever it is that you want to achieve and who it is that you want to be to achieve those things. And that, to me, is a much better way to look at goal setting. So figure out who it is that you want to be to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Okay? That's number one. Long term. And I'm talking years. I'm talking, this is a North Star. You might not ever reach it, but it's setting everything else in alignment. Who it is that you want to be? What is a true aspiration? What are some crazy, tangible, maybe tangible goals that you could achieve with living the life that you want to live? Sort of one and the same. Then from there, what is it that you can take care of for the next 3 to 6 months and really make sure that you get the ball rolling as far as living that life? And then what is it you can do on a weekly basis to ensure that you meet those 3 to 6 months in alignment with everything else? And you just repeat that process forever. And if you find yourself not achieving anything, you find yourself plateauing, you ask yourself, okay, am I living in alignment with that vision? And if I am, something's off, But for the most part, if you're living in alignment with your vision, you ain't going to be plateauing. You're just going to be going so slowly that you might not be seeing that progress. Like, that's where the measurement comes in. That's where, okay, actually, no, you're right. I was running 5K in 30 minutes 2 months ago. Now I'm running, let me see how fast I can do it. Oh, I can do it in like 23 minutes. I've improved loads, But really, you should see that in your progress within your training. You shouldn't need to test from that. Now, that's a topic for another podcast. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you enjoyed this one, give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you have any goals. Let me if you have any questions in the comments on Spotify or YouTube. If I've earned your subscription, thank you so much. Hit that subscribe button. It means a lot. Really helps out. Share it with a mate and set your bloody goals. Let's make 2024 fucking awesome for all of us. Cheers.